Podcasting. So it's been a week, and I'm excited because I got to see you that many times in a row. It's been a minute.
Two times in 1 month or something.
I know we used to do this. We were weekly, very religiously.
I know.
And we built our fan base up to 14 to 16. And I need all of the 14 to 16 to invite a friend. I need more notifications because we are about to talk about something that's going to save the can of this country. And we need them to get into the hands of some folks that can get us into the Orange Man's place to where you, I, and DT can talk about a few things that need to happen for Holman's sake, because otherwise we're going to have a cluster. Although I think it's going to be a little bit... We've seen this act before somewhat, somehow, some way. And so you just got a lot of scared people out there. So you and I talk. I call you because I'm all excited, and we talk on a weekend, which is not every weekend. Yeah. It's not every weekend for us, but I'd like it to be. I mean, I kind of... We have a lot of things going on. You coach basketball. You run a firm. And you don't just coach Little League. I mean, you're coaching, high schoolers.
This last weekend, I was my club team was on the New Balance circuit, so we had 5 or 6 games. In fact, we had 5, and then high school game had on Friday night, and high school game on Monday night. So
and you squeeze in helping your wife around the house.
Then we hosted winter formal at my house on Saturday night. So yeah.
Right, so it's not like
So taking that phone call was a momentous moment there.
It was awesome. I wanted to run something by you because who better than criminal defense and immigration, kind of looking at the situation that we have right now, immigration-wise, in the country as it evolves, as we're starting to say families can be deported together, and being born here is now being questioned, which has caused me to do a little bit of research and a little bit of historical research. Is an interesting that that's never been the case here codified until, what did it say? What was it, it was 71? Or was it 92 when it was codified? What? 2 significant things were codified there where if you're born here, you're a U.S. citizen. It wasn't even the case until, I'm in high school.
I didn't even know that.
And so, I don't see why we would, really, because it just has been what it is. But anchor babies weren't a thing. Now... it's interesting where we're at. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I'm going to try to present this to you and then let you kick it back to me. And let's make this as simple as how we talked about it, because our conversation was not very long, but it was very exciting to me because it seems to me to be a solution. And so I came up with, it can come up with you can come up with a super better acronym. I would like a cool one. I mean, if we're going to do this, let's go all in. But it needs to be IIE or something around there, the Interior Immigration Enforcement. And the reason why I believe it needs to be enforcement is because we're not going to get this through Congress. You and I both know this. We don't have a spit of hope in the ocean for Congress to move on anything relatively remotely
transformative?
Yeah, real, right. Real. Transformative, anything real. Because we've never seen anything real in our lifetime and in the 2 lifetimes before us and in a few lifetimes before them. So we've never really seen an immigration reform that has been in a common sense approach to what our country needs.
1986, basically, last one.
Which it did tackle quite a few things. It just didn't fix it all. Okay, so okay. So the way I look at it is you do a 4-year run just to show Congress this is how it works and this is what a surplus looks like. So you and I have been dealing with, and I don't like saying it that way, you and I have been representing very similar type of people our whole entire careers. And it's not like we just started. So I look old. You still are maintaining incredibly well with this crazy schedule you roll. But
Yeah.
anyway, we've got some wrinkles behind us. We've had some really sad moments in time, and we've had some really, really great ones, and everything in between. And we've dealt very, very specifically or much with the undocumented community that we have here in Arizona. And our goal is to help them process through a very broken process. And I have handled, and now the firm handles on the criminal side, how do we package this just so, or even with our family law side, or even with a car wreck or something like that, and they end up getting driving on a suspended or whatever. So it spills over into a whole lot of stuff. We've talked about that. But what is IIE? It's Interior Immigration Enforcement. So I feel like because it's coming from the executive, because this would have to come from the executive, I feel like it has to be an enforcement-related type of venture. So in my world, there's this thing called self-surrender. There's this thing that you just go turn yourself in. There's a warrant for your arrest. There's a thing called quash your warrant, turn yourself in, go take your medicine. We look at this all day long. It's a very long established thing. Well, self-surrender comes thereafter a penalty. Now, what is the penalty for somebody that's undocumented and has been here for a certain amount of time? And the penalty for trespassing, let's say, or whatever else. So we're going to have to define this a little bit. But the reality is it's a trespass. Okay? So that penalty needs to carry with it a monetary penalty, and they have to qualify, and frankly have it be very transparent, have them pre-qualified even before they roll through this very efficient system. Well, I didn't say government. Did I say government? Hold on. Did I slip up and say government?
No, I mean, you had to have not said government because you said efficient.
Right.
So.
Okay, explain that a little bit. I want to drill down on that because it cannot be government.
No, and I mean, you deal with it mostly on the state side. On the federal side, I deal with it. And so we both have different perspectives, but the same perspective. I mean, if you're dealing with an MVD agency, you know how efficient that is. And I'm dealing with it like I feel like on steroids on a daily basis. So, yeah, just sometimes it's unmotivated employees doing things they don't want to do or just don't care to do, or I don't know what the inefficiency is, but there's a lot of pork around everything, and there's a lot of, yeah.
Puerco.
Yep.
So
takes 3 years to get like we've talked about, 3 years to get a card produced in immigration.
I was just going to bring it up, and you beat me to it. That's awesome. Okay, well, check this out. When's the last time you've been to an MVD?
So I've had 2 teenagers turn 16 in the last 2 or 3 years. So I've been there that many times in the last 2 or 3 years. So twice.
Okay. And which one did you go to? Is
third party every time.
All right. You're making my point. So this IIE is a third party MVD.
Okay.
That's how we have to run this.
Privatize it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got to be private. And then that doesn't mean the funds don't go toward.
Sure. And just like a defense contractor or anything
Exactly.
else.
Okay. And so we've got to pay for the program, but it pays for itself. And so these folks turn themselves in, self-surrender. And at some point there's, okay, you've been here for 18 years. You have a job. You've got, okay. All right. You've got no criminal record or a criminal record that's been
minimal.
It doesn't have. So we have some ramifications around this. And okay, you have 3 kids. Well, then your penalty just went up. Does that make sense?
No.
But we got to cap it at some point.
What do you mean?
Well, let's say that husband, wife, been here for however long. They got a bunch of kids, so on and so forth.
Born here or not born here? The kids.
Could be either one. I like the way you're rolling, though.
Okay.
So this is kind of why you and I need to be batting this back and forth, and we need the sword or the arm of the executive to say, all right, what we're trying to achieve is those that have been here, those that have roots here, what we're trying to achieve is a policy wherein, all right, it's punitive, but it's acceptable to the American people. Okay, it's punitive. They broke the law. They're paying for their crime, but it's acceptable to where, okay, it makes sense. It makes common sense. And then on the flip side, all those very, very well-to-do businesses that hire folks like you and many others that want labor, that need labor. They'll jump through any hoop to keep their Latino labor force. Okay? And you've seen this firsthand. And these are very well-to-do small businesses all the way up to,
Intel hires a bunch.
Right. So Intel and big businesses. Mm-hmm. And so we need a consensus of how many heads do they need? Like, where are the holes in their game? They've had a whole year to hire. And so I would probably put a freeze on border on the crossings for a time. And then let's get that data under control to where we know, okay, this is how many work permits, or this is how much labor we do need, and extend those to those that have the line out, those that are trying to enter our country legally. Okay? And then they renew that as long as they're employed, and so on and so forth. I mean, I went so far as to say in our very, very fast phone call, look, if they've got a bill at the emergency room, if they have this, they have that, they have an unpaid parking ticket. I mean, these things need to be cleaned up, or at least in process of being paid.
Logistically, then you'd have to. So part of the challenge with like social services, like you mentioned, like healthcare, there's definitely probably unpaid bills in emergency rooms, and in fact, mostly emergency rooms, mostly hospitals probably take the flip of it because that's where you can go and get services and you can't be turned down, right? I think one of the major challenges is, though, that they don't offer, there's not private insurance companies that offer insurance plans, or government programs don't offer subsidized programs unless you qualify as a green card holder or have kids or whatever else. So how are you so that's the reason there's unpaid bills. Like, we don't have unpaid bills because our insurance company takes care of it, right? So are you extending healthcare insurance to?
No, there are healthcare insurance providers that would provide undocumented. So that does exist. They just need to be made aware of it. It does exist. Now they're no longer going to be undocumented, though. There is that as well.
So what healthcare do you know that
all
exists?
Healthcare? Oh, there's a few different programs
that give international programs. It's kind of goofy when it gets.
It's a little bit goofy, but the one that I just tripped on not too long ago seemed like decent.
Yeah, I've seen it for if you're on like a visa, and you're here legally, like on a visit, you can do it almost like travel insurance,
right?
But that's usually not offered, in my experience, to somebody like you say, your 15-year guy that's been here for 15 years. And
no, there's a program that I just read up on that seems to work, but that wouldn't be here or there, because if they weren't here illegally in the first place, this is what Joe and Sally Voter are going to say. They wouldn't have that bill. They wouldn't be taking Jesse Westover and Paige Hogel's dollars out of their taxes to cover their bill. And that's what's happening for a long, long time. So if they have an outstanding bill, they need to be in process of paying it. There's also going to be a fine, because when I'm representing somebody for trespassing, there's a fine. If I represent somebody for DUI, there's a fine. When I represent somebody, oddly enough, for assault with a deadly weapon, that one's funny. Because if there is, it's not funny, haha, but it's interesting. If there is damage done, that's called restitution. So we need to define what the restitution would be for this self-surrender. What would be the restitution acceptable to? What is the levy?
Yeah,
back to Les Mis a little bit. We got to level that.
And and I'm trying to get whittled down to your logistics here. So my thought is that you don't want to perpetuate and be cyclical on the arguments against illegal immigration and illegal immigrants in general, in the sense that drain on social services, education, leaving bills unpaid taxes. So you can't put them in a position. I don't mind the restitution part of it. If you've left a bill unpaid, get it paid. But if you're not at this point, I think your proposal as we get to it is going to be like a work authorization or something like that. That's still not a lawful permanent residency application, or it's not a status in the United States. It's what they would call deferred action. So it basically is a protection from deportation, but it's not any type of legal status. So you still have private companies, even though you say you found one. I think you still in general have a lot of social services that can't be taken advantage of, that you're going to end up, look, we've got a problem. We've got United Healthcare CEOs getting killed this week. We've got a problem with healthcare in the first place. And so you're still putting people in a target area of still, hey, okay, now you've come out of the shadows, you got your work permit, but you're still leaving unpaid bills, because if you did have cancer, how are you paying for that? If you can't get insurance, how are you paying for it?
The way I look at it is, and it's a good point. This is why we're running this.
So I don't
This is why we've got, let's just pretend we've got,
if we're going to bring him out,
DT, we got DJT eating his beautiful chocolate cake right there with us. And we're going to say, okay, well, we need to work it. And then let's privatize some things for these folks. That'll come that fast because there's money in healthcare. Sure. It'll be created before we wake up tomorrow. And so then we have the fun. Now we have a really fun topic of their kids. Well, they went to my school. They went to your school. They're going to our kids' school. They're getting federal funds for that school. You're paying for their education. I'm paying for their education. The American people has been paying for their education. This penalty this restitution has to be figured. Okay? Because this is what we call a reckoning. You want to stay, or do you want to deal with Holman? You stay, there's got to be a penalty that satisfies, and there's strength in numbers. And we have the numbers here and now. And so, the qualification should be reasonable. And so they self-surrender. They go through it. It's something we're in. Okay, they pay this, and this, and it might be a time. And their status might not be permanent. They'll have to renew it. That's okay. It's a pathway. And it might be not permanent until all these things are taken care of and a couple of year wait or something like that. This is a penalty. I mean, when you break the law, I represented a dude that was, I love being impressed by my criminals. I really do. It's like one of my favorite things is when somebody actually impresses me. Like, wow. But I was talking to Paige about this with somebody else. I don't remember who, but we represented the biggest DEA bust in Arizona history. And this dude's making bars, they call them, at Xanax. He's making Xanax in his underwear in his kitchen. I don't know why I just threw it in his underwear. I'm not sure he was or not.
You Breaking Bad.
Kind of like that. I mean, I kind of felt like, that. This cat was making a lot of money on the dark web. And his packages were always on time. It was like Amazon. He had a little company, kind of like Amazon, and his stuff was on time, every time, count right on, blah, 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 right? And he's making it in his daggum kitchen. And apparently it was good enough to resell. So, okay, whatever. Ends up buying a $7-8 million house in Peoria. Now, where's that? Paradise Valley. Paradise Valley, yeah. Big old huge garage, a bunch of cars I can't even pronounce, that kind of stuff. But still keeps living in the same one-bedroom studio apartment that he began doing all this in. He's like late 30s, early 40s, if you remember what he looked like, about around there. Wasn't a cool-looking cat, you would never in a million years think this dude was a criminal. And he was in crypto before crypto was cool because you couldn't track it. And so when he got popped, magically his crypto keys, which is a big thing, apparently. I learned a lot about crypto during this case because it's been a handful of years ago. It's like 8 years ago or so. So crypto was in its infancy. I'd never heard of it before. And apparently crypto runs with keys, and these keys disappeared when they seized his assets and all that stuff. And he got caught. And the crypto's never been reappeared. Okay, so I drilled it. So my brilliant legal mind at the time thinks, well, I know where it went. You know where it went. I don't even have to tell you.
Where'd it go?
Apparently, I got to tell the rest of everybody. I like it. Those who seized said crypto, there are not a lot of sophisticates at this period of time in law enforcement. There's not a lot of sophisticates in crypto, and to where something as innocuous as a key can go missing, and then somebody within law enforcement could benefit greatly from the $12 to $14 million of cryptocurrency, which was quite significant. It'd be more like 50 to 60 today.
Bitcoin, yeah.
Could you imagine it now? You know what I mean? And so I find that's my leverage. That's my leverage. And I've got a less than savvy prosecutor. Love the dude, really do, but just wasn't quite, didn't want to quite come out and just accuse, but I wanted them to kind of put two and two together and start looking internally. Who do we have here? So I show up, and I never go to police interviews with my client, like in the car.
Yeah.
So, but this is the kind of client he was. He was just like, okay, let's just jump in. Let's just carpool to Phoenix. And this car pulls up, and it was a Jaguar. And Jaguars they're expensive, and they're nice, and blah, 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 whatever. But, okay, whatever. You can have your opinion on car. It's just a fancy car. And this dude gets out, and he has detective written all over him as far as the way he holds himself, the shaved arms, you know the type. And, well, you might not know the type, but that's my world. Got the shaved arms. They got the tattoos because they got to fit in with the criminals, apparently. And you can smell him from inside my truck that's got its windows up because it got perfume on. My wife would really like this type of fella. She wants me to wear cologne, and that's just never going to happen in a million years. But my point is you could just see that's the dirtbag that took your money. Anyway, so I went in to do the interview, and I said, where are the keys? And he got visibly, shaken up. But anyway, we ended up getting a very good
plea
deal. But he took the plea deal. No, I'm going to leave it right there. We had a very good deal. Okay? Awesome that he got a very good deal, deservedly so, because there's some dirty folks in there. Learn a deal, but hefty enough that he's going to learn a lesson and a half. I mean, he's serving some time in prison. So there is these things where people break the law. There are consequences to your actions. And those consequences have a ripple effect. And so if a father breaks a law or a mother breaks a law, there's a ripple effect in that family. Okay? So it just is what it is. And that's what you and I as American citizens deal with from our justice system. That's what we're going to have to reconcile with those that have been here and have proven to be here for the work. We understand. We're proven to be here for the culture, to better their lives and so on and so forth. And frankly, they better our lives too. So I understand that piece. So I've got the liberal lean there, but there's got to be a penalty there that satisfies justice. So the mercy justice swing can be satisfied. And that way we can get millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people here in that, marching in that order. And frankly, some will elect to, down the road when they're able, will elect to go next steps. Will elect to go residency. Will elect to go, a permanent status. Some may not care.
Is that part of that?
Sure.
Because nothing that we offer on deferred action right now, even DACA, which has been around since 2012, offers any type of road to.
We're changing the world.
Okay.
Just what we and you
there's
are
there's a back
them,
end goal
right.
on this.
You and me are showing Congress and helping Holman all at the same time. We're showing them this is how it's done, boys. This is how you make a little bit of money doing it. This is how they pay their way. This is how the American people would go, okay, all right. And this is beneficial to your clients, both the ones that we share and the ones that want them to work with them. Okay? This is beneficial all the way across the board. And then, no, a terrible example I was just going to use, but then Mr. Holman can go buck wild on the not so goods. The folks that are, not wanted here because of their, because of how they comport. The people that are kicking folks on a subway, or the people that are taking over the or doing your drive-by shootings or whatever else. I mean, you want to filter that stuff out. Then it's not fair on the other side of that border now, is it? It's not equitable. These folks broke the law and then got a benefit, but how many times have we seen that already under the current system? People out there don't know that. People break the law, go through us, and end up getting status in this country.
People, I mean, your guy that walks out of prison, whether it has already happened or in the future, is still probably got a pile of cash sitting somewhere buried somewhere. So.
I told you I stopped short, man.
No, and that's just a reality.
Real fast.
Like, yeah,
he's not doing bad for himself.
The reality is, that's.
I started going down a wrong road real fast, but you're right. Yes.
We'll talk at just generalities. That there are people that are involved. I mean, Sammy the Bull was still living in Arizona for a long time after killing
I met him.
23 people. So
I met him at El Charro. I've met a few folks that are of fame at the El Charro. Waylon Jennings is my favorite so far, but Sammy the Bull was right there with him. It was like,
So look,
that dude's killed people.
Yeah,
I mean, it takes a minute. It takes a little bit to impress me, but this kid impressed me. So did Sammy the Bull, but he didn't need my services. So far, he seems like he's kept himself out of some trouble.
I think he got busted for selling Xanax with ecstasy with his son. Actually,
no, it was X. Yeah, it's true. But somehow he escaped.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying. I like and we've talked about this a lot. I've liked the idea of bringing people out of the shadows. I think it's logical. I think it's needed. I mean, what you're proposing is basically a combination of DACA and the Gang of Eight's proposal a long time ago. And the problem with that is that neither one of them got much traction. I mean, DACA got passed and has been challenged legally for the last.
Well, there's holes in DACA too that you and I know of.
But it's similar. I mean, you brought people out of the shadows. You criminally backgrounded them. You had requirements and you had a monetary fee that they have to renew every year. I mean, they're still paying $500 a year to be able to work. So it's similar. There wasn't necessarily
but there needs to be an end.
A monetary
there
penalty.
Needs to be, okay, you can at some point.
That's where your combination with kind of the Gang of Eight's proposal, which was like a 14-year path to citizenship as long as you did.
I'm looking at a decade, but they can elect their path if they can pay more. If that makes sense, then they can shorten that sentence.
Yeah, and that'll take some.
Because some people make more than others.
Yeah, that'll take some concessions. Because that's the thing is that I've seen these things die and die time and time again.
Well, that's why you and I are doing it in executive fashion on the private side. We're the third-party MVD.
I mean, I guess on the executive side, it could work with a Republican-led president.
It has to be
because
on
the challenges have always been on the other side.
Yeah. It has to be on the executive for now.
Here's my thought, though. I bet you dollars of donuts that even if President Trump proposed something like that Texas would appeal it. Every time.
You're ratting me out all sorts of places right now. Yeah, I don't like anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't put it past Texas to even appeal something led by a Republican president.
But there's us now. We're like Elon and Vivek, only better looking. It's business? It's strictly business. We're going to do it. And we're going to do it there. Otherwise, Holman's going to have a problem there because we're going to go take over their federal buildings that they have that are vacant. And we're just going to start making this process. It's going to be literally that fast of a process, and the line's going to be around. It's going to be all the way to Amarillo.
No, and that's not. I mean, you and I are in the trenches, and so we know the people. And
they'll do it.
The people that are willing to. I mean, I have people all the time come in. I'm so booked right now with a lot of consultations that are just anything. What can you give me? What
Right.
Anything you can offer me. I mean, I had a Canadian yesterday that drove down her horse trailer and just wants to be able to work in the United States. And
Is her name Sandy?
no, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Maybe could have been. And it's, and it's like, okay, hey, and she came on a visa. She's not overstayed it. She hasn't done anything wrong, but it was like, hey, what can I do? And I'm like, nothing. Do you have $100,000? I can, if you got that, maybe you can do an investment visa. Apart from that, I got no options for you.
She didn't have $100,000?
She didn't have $100,000.
She could invest in us.
So yeah, we this is something that I get every day, and it can be, and it's not just your labor, Sonoran Mexicans that are coming up and working in the agricultural fields or in the construction industry. It's all across the board, and we just don't. We're very limited. We're capped out on numerical limitations on visas. We've talked about all this. Even the family-based side is 30-year wait, and we've created this logistical nightmare to do it illegally. And then I'm separating the border stuff that's gone on in the last 2 years because that's a problem, and I don't want to all of a sudden minimize that because we've created a problem with that. But let's just go back before 2 years, and we've had an immigration problem for a long time. Mm-hmm. And what you're proposing is a solution to something not just happened in the 2 years. And like you said, seal the border, whatever. Even if you don't let anybody in the next year while you figure this out, whatever. I'm that's neither here nor there for me. I that could be fine. I don't really care. But my challenge is that you've had these people that have been here for a long time, and you've created a system that basically doesn't. I mean, there's just not a path. There's just you can't wait. I mean, you can. I shouldn't say that, but your motivation to wait 30 years in Mexico,
you're very limited,
is going to be hard.
Right.
Indians right now are at a 15-year backlog on like business, like H-1B guys, the bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, and so you've created this system that's not indicative, or it's not reflective of the population, of the labor needs, but the problem is that you've mixed it with this heavy enforcement that needs to be done, and the priority is going to be on the enforcement, and then we're going to be back in the same situation.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, look, they show up. They have most of these things.
You're talking about if we do something,
right?
And my
look, the way that
my
I've
faith
got this
of that happening is what I'm saying.
All we need to do is talk to the orange fella, and if he gets over the fact that I keep saying the orange fella, because I mean he's a very handsome fellow. I like Donald Trump. I think he's good for this country, but we need to wash it a little bit with some reality, because things are going to come off the hinges, and they don't need to here. They really don't. In fact, I think right now is the time to swing. It's not the time to swing way over here. It is the time to go, okay, here's a DACA order, because that was an executive order. Here's what this one looks like, and it's the IIE. And here's how you do it. And here's all of the things in which it encompasses. And there is a down the road, unlike DACA, because DACA couldn't have a down the road because it was executive order. So we have literally 4 years, maybe reality 2, to get this thing
through
codified in Congress.
Yeah.
And so once Congress sees that this thing works, and it's not necessarily a punishment, an overly harsh punishment, it is a fair fine for having had breaking the law. And it needs to be, you and I need to bang through that, talk about it, table it a little bit. What does this look like? Because you can't have somebody else over here on the other side of the fence going, I'm never going to get in for 30 years, like you were just bringing up. Okay, so then that encourages that cross. And so what we want to do is have an administrative fee over there for $27 and come on in and start working. But how do we know that we can allow somebody through our front door? How do we know we can? Well, because we know that there's work that is needed here, and here. And we have those numbers. And so those are the amounts. And if you're in that line and we have, let's say, 1,942,000 one year, and then the next year, and you're just so happen to be 1,943,000th in line, okay, well, the next year you're first in line. Does that make sense? Like it.
Oh, you keep asking me if things make sense. Of course.
But I'm just saying this is how it works. And it can be started and it can be done and it can be run executively with an executive order. However, because it can't run any other way, in my opinion, if we want the third-party MVD flavor, if we want efficiency, you add government in anything, it's no longer efficient. So if we want efficiency, once we codify it, it needs to remain that way, efficient, like to where they're subcontractors for the government. Boom, boom, boom. And this continues to go on. But we kind of have to have a cutoff too, if that makes sense. Like it has to be, all right, you have to have, the qualifications are XYZ, LMNOP, and you have this much time to do it. And we need to be very efficient in the execution of this. And the reality is I believe it can be done because we've got people on the other side of the border going, oh, and we have voters going. So we've been paying for these guys for a long period of time, and they're not wrong, and they're not completely right either. So you and I can both kind of...
Yeah, all of this can be done. My biggest concern is that so I'm going to blame heavily President Biden right now. If we didn't have this asylum open border issue that happened in the last 2 years, you might have a more calm community culture around immigration where a Republican president like President Trump could come in and say, hey, not only am I going to enforce, but I'm actually going to be an innovator. I'm going to be a reformer. I'm going to actually solve something, which he loves to do. He's a problem solver, and it's something that I think he could take a legacy in doing. But I think this culture right now that we're living in, and I've heard him say it many times this week, he is so worried about fulfilling his campaign promises of basically ridding the world of any immigrant that's here. He did concede a little bit on DACA, but we're talking he's extending it now to birthright citizenship. He's extending it to deporting entire families together. He's extending it to, they've asked him, he did back off a little bit. It was like, okay, who are you going after first? And he did say, hey, we're going after the criminals first. Right. But then said, but don't think that you're safe if you're not. Like that's the next person we're coming after. And so we've created, and he's got this big fervor and fire that's in the community that's helping fuel that. And so I don't know where his mind is as far as being a reformer. Right now, he seems to be an enforcer, not a reformer.
So I figured we'd use that momentum.
So where does that momentum end up being swung back?
Momentum to boomerang back to, oh, you want to stay? All right.
But he's gotta be able to, and it's not. I'm not blaming Trump. But
every crime,
the climate's got to change a little.
Yeah,
bit.
I understand. But this could use that momentum, in my opinion. Oh, you want to stay? Do you? Okay. Not every crime is a mandatory prison time. In fact, there are a lot of crimes that you can commit that you don't go to jail for or prison. Okay. So this just so happens to be one of them.
Yeah, and then you automatically are going to get
the
A word, amnesty.
And so I made.
Doesn't matter if you give them a $50,000 penalty
now.
Amnesty.
There's
asylum and amnesty.
Yes, there's 2 A words, and it used to be only one. Dadgummit. Now we have to get used to 2, and they're both going to have to get off the tongue of people because this is neither of them. This is all right. You committed a crime. You self-surrendered. You saved us. There is some money being saved. We're not hunting your buns down and putting you through the process. So that's expensive. Went across the board. So you're saving us that.
And it's cyclical.
Right.
You know that we talked about this, is that if President Trump doesn't win, let's say he somehow, this is how we've seen the pendulum swing. Somehow the economy doesn't do well or whatever else, or he's said enough hateful things that people are on his but again, and we have a different election turnout in 4 years.
Well, we're going to have to,
And
because this is a second term.
in my world, well, let's say a Republican doesn't win and it's a Democrat that wins again, and that's kind of where we've seen this pendulum swing. In my world, that means all these people that we've enforced and put into court now have different priorities and get closed out. Like I've seen this a million times. So you've gotten rid of really nobody,
which is
so,
what we've been living.
Yeah,
so this is
20,
where I'm
30
going
years.
All right, here's the teeth.
I literally have clients
And
that were put in
literally-
proceedings in 2008.
Yeah.
And I still have them.
And they're good friends of yours now.
And they work permits, and they're great. They're great people.
All I'm saying is that these are the jokes, kid. This is where we get it done. This is now the time. You got to strike now, because there's too much upshot to it, and there's the downside. Am I missing something? Am I missing something? I'm not missing anything.
So I agree
because we're
with
considering the businesses here. We're considering the consensus of, or excuse me, not consensus, the census of how many jobs are necessary. The actual true number, and that shouldn't be very hard. I mean, hell, we might be working with Elon and Vivek on this, saying, all right, give me some numbers, guys. I need to know how many permits they need here, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And we release that at some point every year. And that's for the folks waiting to get into our country legally. Bada bing. Great. And this is what the pathway to a permanent status in our country looks like. And this is the cost for the crime that having been committed, and you have to say guilty, committed it, and this is how you work off that crime. And then from this point on, if you want to continue to work here with that status, you renew it for this much. Or if you want permanent status, this is the penalty carries up to 12 to 14 year whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you're on year 12 and you're all paid up and did all your things and you did it, so on and so forth. Then you can start working towards. Most of them are going, no. Some are going to retire back to Mexico.
Maybe.
Well, that's what they used to do.
Sometimes.
That was the good old school fashioned way to do it. And some are going to stay here. And that's fine. Either way, but they're legally here. And so my point is let's get this to where Congress is going, I can't fight against that. I'm AOC and I want to fight against it, but it pays for the war I want to go to.
Sure. And all of it, yeah, in an idealist world, I'm on board. And I really do think that enforcement, if you're with anything, if you're just opening the borders and there's no enforcement, you create a problem. If you just enforce and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, there's no provision where somebody can actually do it the right way, then you've created another problem. You've created fear, and then you've created shadows, and then you have people hiding, and then you create sanctuary cities, and then you create all kinds of stuff. Because unfortunately, or probably fortunately, our country has different opinions, right?
Yeah.
And so no matter what, we're not going to be able to make everyone happy. But if you're just enforcement, if you're just open, then you create these dichotomies, these big balance shifts.
We're going to ignore the cute lady in the corner for just a minute, though. But then I'm going to allow you to call on her because you like to talk to her.
Of course.
But the cool part is you just brought up sanctuary cities, so I didn't want to lose my train. Now all of a sudden you can go arrest the governor of that state. Now all of a sudden you can go arrest the officials of that state because there is no excuse to not do this.
Yeah, and I don't think the motivation for sanctuary cities to exist would be as high at that point, because the majority of sanctuary cities are not saying, hey, let's hide all the Venezuelan gangs. Right. They're saying, let's hide the
you're
guy
poor
that's been
and
here
you're
for 20
hungry
years and has 4 kids and served in the military. Like, we've heard all these stories of the actual, news stories that make sanctuary cities. But
don't get me started. I did have a military idea too.
Okay.
And you just brought it up. But anyway, there's a lot of different ways to go ahead and skin this cat, but to have something firm and to have something moving forward, to have something that Congress looks at and goes, tough to argue with, and the constituents on both sides, both the left-leaning side and the right-leaning side, are like, well, how do we agree on something? I can actually watch Bill Maher on this topic now. Weird. Or I can actually watch, whomever else. It doesn't matter. But to me, this is like the change that we've been Are you going to put a suit on and come to D.C. with me? Because I don't even know if D.C. is D.C. I think we might have to go to Mar-a-Lago, but I don't know if they'll let us in.
That's true.
But that's fine. We'll give
New
us
York
a try.
is where he spent most of the time last time.
That's okay. Well, we're going to figure this out, but they're going to need us because I think like a criminal. It's beautiful. And you think like an immigration attorney, and that's what we need. We need this to where Congress pays attention. And now all of a sudden, that whole entire Civil War was fought for no reason whatsoever if we don't have that 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
This whole entire war we're about to fight on immigration will be for nothing, like you called already just a few minutes ago, will be for nothing if we don't have an amendment.
solution. Sure.
Right. Yeah. And so this has to go through Congress. They have to get off their can. And Beck, PBD, all the big podcasters out there, Rogan, they need to be paying attention to us right now because these two homeboys from Arizona got something cooking that they need to be picking up.
No, I mean, it's logically, I love it.
Logically, I love it. We're ending it on. Oh, wait. We had questions in the.
And what pays for the enforcement? Because obviously they would have a heavy enforcement. They'd be subject to enforcement if they didn't have this card or this exception that they've got there in the path. They're on the iron rod,
right.
Then they're subject to enforcement, which is paid for how?
Same way it's paid for now.
Yeah, enforcement's always been.
No,
it's government funded.
No, it's
So wouldn't it make sense if the enforcement was paid by?
Oh, this particular idea makes all sorts of financial sense. That's why it's not in the government. And both of us cringe when we think if this was a government program, this would never fly in 1,016 years because
You throw the money in different spots.
all the red tape hides the money. And so here, this would have to be a contract type thing, kind of like Doge is. And frankly, that's what gave me the idea. I thought, daggum, this is ripe for immigration, and specifically the ones that are here undocumented. And frankly, the ones that have come in here, and there's the 2A words that we talked about. We're not impressed by asylum.
Yeah, so immigration's a lot of times self-funded. I don't know, a lot of people know that. So like USCIS, which is all your applications for benefits, work permits, green cards, whatever else, is completely self-funded. There's not a there's budget for it, but there's, for the most part, their fees are their workforce is paid for by their fees.
By the holder.
Enforcement can't be that way unless you have a program like
Right.
this with a self-surrender, because enforcement, nobody's paying for somebody to come and look for them.
Yeah,
So,
but they pay an enforcement fee.
but yes,
Along with
if you, yeah,
You can allocate, but we'll deal with that later because that to me seems like, you know what? Let's figure where that goes.
you could throw that in there. You could
Because
throw
the
a
reality
$200
is
enforcement fee.
we're wanting a big line, and we want a quality hearing, and we want something that's put together very quickly, that's very efficient, something like we've never seen before in any governmental industry, something that wherein it is fair, it's equitable, and it's meets those terms of as we look at justice here in America. As we look at justice, it meets that, okay, that's fair. You did the crime, you did just some time, or whatever you want to call it. You paid for the crime and the crime portion of this. And then, all right, let's move forward from there. And
I mean,
frankly, then we get to keep the best food that we eat. And I'm not trying to be funny. It's really good. Have you ever seen the movie A Day Without a Mexican?
no, never even heard of it.
Why am I so old and you people aren't? Look it up. It's not that old. It seems new to me in my mind. Look it up. It's a documentary.
Oh.
It was as though poof one day, and it was kind of based out of, I think, Southern California. It might have been.
And their agricultural industry
just poof, a day without everything. It's just like they just disappeared, like raptured style, right? And this sucker was mind blowing.
Oh, I could imagine. I mean, people. That's the argument that we, to sum up what we've even been talking about. That we haven't even talked about you talked about ripple effects of enforcement. Well, ripple effects of enforcement also go into the community, right?
Yeah.
So if you start deporting people that aren't your criminals and start going after families and whatever else, then you're starting to deport a lot of people that make your life a lot easier. And you've heard little inklings of that. The economy is going to suffer. Labor force is going to suffer. Trump's kind of ignored a little bit about that. But no, if you literally did what he proposed to do and 10 million people are gone tomorrow that are cleaning your hotel rooms and cooking your food and Panda Express and whatever else, life would be different for sure. And and people don't want to actually think about that part of it. That's not something.
America save Panda.
Yeah.
And everywhere else.
And Chick-fil-A.
Oh. No? Anyway, but some. But anyway, yeah, no, there's an enormous impact. Yeah. This to me is an enormous solution that needs to be simple, straight is the way, narrow is the gate, right through it, and it needs to have an end game. And it also needs Congress, because we're now Lincoln. We're putting on the top hat now. Now Trump needs to put on the top hat, and he needs to be Lincoln. Everything is for naught. Everything is for zero.
I'd love it.
If you didn't get that amendment.
I'd love it. We'd have to problem solve, and it's been a hard thing to do in the
Let's
last
do
20
it.
years.
I think we do it. All right. So all the people out there that have interest, PBD, Beck, come on, guys. I want, Tucker might have might have a phone number to the Mar-a-Lago place. All we need is a little bit of time. Hey, this is how you want this to work. I'm just saying.
It's got to be 2 years. Get it done.
Let's get her done. All right.